Hello. I hope that your week has been going good this far and you're having a good day. In my place around the neighborhood, it's been raining all day, so I've kind of been staying in. Before we get into our lesson, I want to make sure and check in with you to see how you're doing. Are you managing your stress? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking time just to relax and breathe? I'm hoping so. If not, that should be on your checklist every day. Doing something to help you, get through this and cope through all this. I want to go ahead and get started because we got a lot to cover. Today we're going to be talking, if you'll go ahead and turn to chapter 9 in your book, and we're going to be covering some things about late adulthood. And oh, how I wish that I was in this class with you in front of you so that we could have, I'm sure we would be having some very interesting conversations centered around what does late adulthood look like. Well, for those, I think it's a very beautiful time in life. I think it has a whole lot of valuable resources in it. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what is late adulthood. Also, we're going to talk about some of those myths that's associated with it. And we're going to talk about that. And as we're talking about these things, I want you to think about those who are in that late adulthood that you may know. Okay? So if you'll turn to your book on page 316, we're going to go ahead and get right into this. And also, I have notes, and listen here, I got notes all over this place. So you'll take a lot of notes for those who are taking notes, or if you're recording this, or however, whatever you need to do so that you can be the best that you can be. Now, we've covered a whole lot this semester, going back from birth all the way to this point in life. And if you have your PowerPoint up, I'm going to be referencing the PowerPoint and your books, and we're just going to have some discussion about late adulthood. Something that I want to point out to you that I found very interesting to note that the most commonly discussed psychosocial theories of social gerontology are disengagement, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about activity, continuity, social construction, fitness, social exchange, life biological aging, and all those theories that are associated with late adulthood. And for those who have already read your book, and you know that when we're talking about late adulthood, there's a certain time frame in the age, and late adulthood is considered to be 65 to 85, or 65 and older, at least to 85. That's late adulthood. And then as you think about people that you know, and the myths and things that are associated with people who are at that age, you kind of, some people may think of people who are pretty much homebound or not able. But today in our lesson, and then on the interview that I was able to do, and I'm gonna upload that for you to view, you're gonna see that people have a continuity in life, that they continue to thrive. And then we're just gonna talk about how we, as the United States, how we view our people who are considered late adulthood. Now, one of the things, late adulthood covers 1/4 to 1/3 of a person's life. Now, I want to say this about this, and I found this very interesting. It covers 1/4 to 1/3 of a person's life. So we know, like all individuals on a day-to-day basis, that when you're dealing with late adulthood, you know that that has to do with that person's, their present, their past, and all that. And so, at this age, most of them have more time behind them than they do before them, if you're looking at the chronological age and the expectant life expectancy of that. So one of the things that I found really interesting in your book, if you turn to page 316, it says, like all other individuals, their day-to-day life incorporates past, present, and future orientations. in terms their lifespan, they have more, and I said that they have more time past them than they do ahead of them. So I thought that was interesting. And as I was reading this and studying this lesson, I was thinking about my grandmother, who lived to be 98. My grandfather lived to be 104, and then my maternal grandfather lived to be 95, and then my maternal grandmother, she passed early due to cancer. So longevity, there's a lot, that, and you just think about your grandparents and people that fall between the ages of 65 and to 85. That's considered late adulthood. Page 316, there are some common myths that are associated with as people begin to age, and they are listed here in your book. And I want us to take a look at that. One of the common myths that is frequently research says that people find that older people are not preoccupied with death and dying. They're not sitting there thinking about, woe, it's me. It's time for my death and die. However, now, wait a minute. Oh, there's some good stuff. However, if someone is in that stage of stagnation, there's a possibility that that's all they're thinking about is death and dying. Or there's a possibility, people who are in generative, like they feel like they're giving and they're continuing to give. Now, I'm sitting here as I reflect and talk about this lesson. I'm thinking about my grandmother, whom I love dearly. When she died at 98 years old, and matter of fact, we had a birthday party one day. They checked on her that night, and she passed. She slept on the next day. So I got to thinking about some of those conversations that we had before, and she used to say, I don't know if she was in stagnation because we were still trying to love her, and we were there for and everything, but she just was lonely. She was lonely for people her age, her friends, despite the love, so sometimes, even though, people are provided with love and attention and affection and got all that family support, there's a longing for people in their era, in their time when they were born. So just kind of know that. So not all people between 65 and 85, and not all people are preoccupied with death. As a matter of fact, on the interview, you're going to see that I had with someone. I think they're, preoccupied with living, and are able to, and they're able and willing to learn new things. Now, I'm not going to say everybody is, but there are some things. This is interesting. Think about people in that age, 65 to 85. How many of them have a Facebook account? How many of them are now using cell phones? That's a new task. That's a new form of communication that a lot of them have never, ever used or not ever considered using. So they have that capability of holding positions and learning new things. Just don't make that assumption because someone is old that they are not at that point where they are not able to learn new things. Another one, still feel that they can and want to be in control of their life. You know what? They do. People want to, until there's a cognitive reason why or a physical reason why, they want to make those choices, make those decisions about their life. A lot of times we say nothing about me without me. Don't make plans for people who are able, cognitive and physically, to make those decisions. And so as you prepare to work in this professional setting, be mindful of that. Just because someone is between 65 and 85 doesn't mean that they want you to make their decision for them. And even when we do, sometimes people, you do that, but you're doing that and you're thinking you're doing it good, but they want to make their own decision, especially if they're able to. And then, we as social workers, we know the importance of the value of human life and the dignity and respect for all people. So connect those dots. And they still have life goals. When I was thinking about that, the life goals may not look like our life goals or something that that there may be, just think about the Olympic stars and the elderly people who they just wanted to do some things that people didn't think that they would ever be able to do because of their age. There may be something on their bucket list that they want to check off. And so that's important. And do not live primarily in the past. Now that's something um, people make the assumption that when you get old, that's all you think about, the past. Now, as we go into this chapter and learn about this chapter, we will find that there may be some cognitive reasons or some diagnoses that take place that have a person living in the past. Now, there are some people who are, but then we'll have to talk about those medical diagnoses and things that are going with them. And they still have an active life and they want to be healthy. So I want us to make sure that you're aware of all those myths that people sometimes make assumptions. And you know what happens when you make assumptions. We are not making assumptions about anyone on their life trajectory. No one. These are just some guidelines that you kind of to look at, but we don't make assumptions. Now, the term late adulthood covers, like I said, 1/4 to 1/3 of a person's life. And people at this stage of life, it's interesting, okay? Because each person is an individual. We look at that person and their environment, and I found it very interesting. Look on your book on page 316. You may have people who are active. There may be some less active. You might have people who are healthy, unhealthy. It could be anywhere. You could have people who are able to do things. And a lot of this is based on their experiences that they had. Now, if they grew up, and you have to take in consideration socioeconomic status, you have to take in consideration their gender, you have to take in their educational opportunities, and all this to decide how they're going to be, later on in life. If you have someone who hasn't ever gotten out or had health problems early, of course they may not be as active as someone else. So remember, each person is an old expression. People say every tub has a set on its bottom. Each person is their own individual. We have to remember that, okay? One of the things I found interesting on here, the term old can have many meanings. Okay. I'm going to say that again. The term old can have many meanings. Sometimes that can be very offensive when you're talking to people in certain categories, when you're referencing them as old. So we want to be mindful that we're treating people with dignity and respect, and that we're not, saying old. Because a lot of times old can mean, what's going on by attitudes, assumptions, your biases, and your cultural interpretation of what it means to grow old. So be mindful, when you talk to, people in this stage of development, and referencing them as old, or they may find that very offensive, because what are you saying? Instead, we want to use an older population, or ask them what they want to be called or how you want to be referenced. But just remember, people 65 years older sometimes may not like that. Now, there are some other things that I have highlighted here in the book that I wanted, before we move on, that it talks about, according to the U.S. Census data, the 85 and the older population is the fastest growing segment of aging population. 85 and older. Even though people said people are living young, long, or dying early, younger, but people are actually living longer than they have done in the past. And so I just wanted to make sure you have an idea of that. Turn to page 317 in your book. There are some things we want to look at. But before we get to that, I want to look at, there's an increased life expectancy is a product of many factors. Now, we're saying that people are living longer, but there are some factors that protective factors, or factors that are in place that may allow a person to live longer versus someone else. And one of those is increased life expectancy is a product of a number of factors. One, decreased mortality of children and young adults. Okay, decreased mortality among aging aging, improved health, technology, and other factors. And you can find that on page 317. But it says research found that United States has the lowest average life expectancy of 17 high income countries. And that was real interesting to me that we love the United States, but we really lag behind in a lot of things. And as we think about this coronavirus, our preparedness, how prepared were we, especially for the elderly, and how is that impacting those who are elderly. Um, One of the things that what I want you to know, life expectancy increases based on socioeconomic status. That's something to think about. So that's saying if someone comes, so what is this class, socioeconomic status, and what is that saying? Are the poor at a disadvantage? Well, of course, because it's all about access. What resources do they have? What is available? What is readily available to them? Okay, so that has a lot to do. So now although um, this coronavirus is impacting the whole world and every stage of development. Initially they said it wasn't for adolescents and children. However, that has since changed. But I want you to think about, there was a discussion before the government made all of the testing available for all. You remember there was a big uproar because there were people who were needing a test, and there were people like the basketball players and people who had a lot of financial status were able to get that test when people who really needed were not able. So look at that. The socioeconomic status impact longevity in life. So just kind of look at that and be familiar with that. On page 317 at the top, dependency ratio. The ratio of dependent age groups to the working age population. Look there, it's an indicator that expresses the degree of demand placed on society by young and the age combined. The ratio of dependent age group to the working age population. Okay, that's a mouthful. Okay, but look on page 317, read that, and just kind of be very familiar with that. Okay, we're going to go on to our next page. And I want to make sure that it's on page 317, some things that I haven't. Diversity in the late adult. There's a shifting in the racial and ethnic trends. This is a time now, I'm just doing a plug, get those census, make sure you complete the census and get that mail back in, because that's how they determine this shift and what our world looks like. Hispanics are facing a growing segment of the older population. Hispanics are the fastest growing segment of the older adult population, with an expected increase of 123% from 2015 to 2013. During the same period, other adult ethnic groups are projected to increase by 80 to 90%. You'll need to know that information is found on page 318. Hispanics are the fastest growing segment of the older age population, with an expected increase of 123%. Y'all, that's significant growth. And that's during the time between 2015 to 2030. So we're right in the midst of this calculation now. And then there's while the other ethnic groups will grow at an increased 80 to 90%. I don't normally focus on numbers, but I think it's going to be important to kind of have an ideal or working understanding of that. That's found on page 318 in your book. There's also Exhibit 9.1 that gives you a little bit more ratio of the youth, and also with elderly who are 65 years and older. Quite interesting. And as I travel through this life in my own personal journey, it becomes more interesting. Okay. Now, diversity in late adulthood. I want you to look at some things here. Women continue, listen, women continue to outnumber men in the age 65 and older. Okay, I want that look in your book. I found that on page 319. So also that all men women outlive men. Some research and studies says because of most time men work outside the house and the care and how they take care of the body. You can about find different research to support anything, but that is one of the ones that they talk about. Then the LGBTQ elder face unique challenges. There's a high rate of health conditions, obesity and disabilities, and HIV. Now that to me, that was startling to me to hear that. I was trying, I didn't write the book, but I was trying to connect the research and the data on obesity and disability with LGBTQ. It just kind of, that was interesting. There's an increased risk for suicide being victims of violence in that population. And I found that interesting as well. If you want to do more reading and research on that, it's on page 319 in your book. But for this particular conversation and discussion, these are some points that you really you want to make sure that you know. And I am hoping that you are reading those case studies at the front of your book just to kind of familiarize yourself with what we're going to be talking about. But we talked about late adulthood. We also have talked about dependency ratio. And then we're talking now, I want some points I may have already cleared, but ethnic minorities experience unique challenges such as adequate income and health disparities. And so, it just depends, on that. Older adults in rural areas face even more challenges. One of those things is transportation barriers, access. How do people have access? And like right now, as a social worker, as an advocate for macro, I'm sitting here thinking about as we go through this, and I want you to think about it too, as we're going through this COVID crisis right now. Everything that, if you need financial or to file unemployment, if you need to get information on this or this, where do they want you to get it from? The internet. Now, not all people have access to computers, smartphones, and devices. So what are the poor going to do? Hopefully they got some grandchildren and family members or someone who can provide that support to them, in the midst of all this is going on. So I just thought that was interesting to know. And just think about older people, like they're living in rural areas. Most time the grocery stores are far away. A lot of them may not be able to drive. That's a stereotype, but access. What doors or opportunities that are afforded to people may be something that's afforded to some, may not be afforded to others, and may keep them at a stage, place where they are not able to get the information that they need. That's just that's been bothering me, as a social worker, knowing that a lot of the information about the health issues are being, saying access through, you can web. Not everybody has that, okay? And not everybody has that ability to learn that. And then now just think about we're in a shelter in place, and how can they even go to the libraries? How can they even go to these places to get that? So there are a lot of people who are facing some challenges that's outside their control. And yes, it has to do with their socioeconomic status and their ability to access those resources. That's something to think about. That's why it's important that you know your resources so that you can help other people. Okay, let's look here on cultural construction of late adulthood. And I want to take you to on something on page 321, but we're going to just hold right there. I got something on aging population viewed and treated differently in other cultures. Now, this right here, when I was reading this, it kind of disturbed me, but that's something we can have these conversations about. Do you believe that? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on how America or how different cultures relate to their people, their elders? Um, there are some things that point out on page 3. Did I miss? I get it. I guess I got ahead of myself. It's such some good stuff. But no, I didn't. I'm on the right page. I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself. Sometimes when you get in the midst of some good stuff like this, you may get a little ahead of yourself. But we're talking about cultural approaches aging differently. I found it very interesting, very, very interesting that the Chinese culture, older people are venerated and given deference. They are treated with such great, like they are respect and reverence. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, well, I treated my grandparents with the same way. But when you're talking about overall culture, it says that in Chinese culture that they look at them as a person of wisdom who can contribute to life and giving and making sure that the next generation is prepared. So I mean, they're not just someone who babysits their kids. They're not someone who just cooks or something. These are people who can sow wisdom and a whole lot of information, into their next generation. So they're held to a high regard. So and then I got to thinking about that. And when people become grandmas or mamas or all that, what role do we put them in? We typically put them in roles of caregivers or taking care of the babies or something. But do we really reverence them or put them in? Do we really venerate them to the point where we value what they have cognitive to give to the next world? That's something to think about. Just think about that. And America, older people are regarded as dependent. Like we had, like this is a dependent, somebody I have to take care of, or this is somebody who have to take care of somebody. It could go either way. But look on page exhibit 9.4. Wait, hold on. We'll go back to that. Well, no, we'll go ahead if you want to. We'll be flipping back and forth, but I thought it was interesting. On page 325, if you'll take a look at that dimensions of productive aging and look at, that there's 3 different dimensions. You have your inner, your affective, oh Lord, excuse me. And utilitarian and outer. I messed that word up, I do believe. But look at that. I just want you to have that, to look at that, for just review that and kind of be familiar with that, but just kind of be able to be familiar with that particular slide, PowerPoint. I want to get to this one that you really need to know. On page 321, okay? There are 6 traits for growing old with grace. With grace. And I want us to read them. There, like I said, they are on page 321 in your books. You'll want to know them. One of them says caring about others and remaining open to new ideas. Again, I cannot wait to upload that video because on that video, we will, instead of doing an assignment, I think we'll do a Blackboard discussion board after you watch that, and you can talk about some of the things that you recognize in the interview. Showing cheerful tolerance of indignities, of old age, being cheerful about it, maintaining hope, maintaining a sense of humor and capacity for play. Now, I have a elderly aunt who's 88, and she is funny sometimes, but then she can be something serious at other times. Taking experiences from the past while remaining curious about the future and learning about the next generation and new things. I ask you, have any of you tried to teach your grandparents or people about technology, that and maintaining Now listen to this. Maintaining contact and intimacy with old friends. Not just saying woe is me, but just having that relationship that says I care about you. So that's important. That's how they grow old with grace. Okay. Um, Please kind of know that and be aware of that. Now, look on the psychosocial. You want to know this. This is some really good stuff here. Your psychosocial theoretical perspective on social gerontology. This is something you need to know, okay? And I want you to read it. I want you to know it. And I want you to go over it, okay? Social gerontology means it's the social science that studies human aging, okay? Now we know that gerontology is the study of aging, okay? But when we say social gerontology, this is the science of how human age, how they age, and what are some of the things that take place when they age. So I want to point out one that I want to start with. On here, you can look on your PowerPoint, and you can also find this on page 322 in your book, and that's Exhibit 9.3. This book has great detail information about each theory. You want to know them. Disengagement theory, you want to know about each one of them. I'm not going to sit here and read this to you because I want you to read it and get an understanding, but you will need to know this, okay? There are different theory about each one of them, and as you can see, I have studied them, but I want to keep our video down to at least an hour in order for me to get through this. Page 322, Exhibit 9.3. Be familiar with that, and after you read it, and even when you're getting ready to watch that video and we have some feedback on your assignment from that video, I want to see some of this in here if you're able to recognize some of that during your watching that video. Okay, so please be familiar with that, read that, and have a good understanding of that. Okay, but I'm gonna briefly give you a little because I feel bad if I don't. Okay, disengagement, but again, you are going to have to read it for yourself. I'm gonna give you a little points on it. Okay. Disengagement suggests that as elderly individuals grow older, they gradually decrease their social interactions and ties and become increasingly self-preoccupied. And they don't have the desire to go out and to do all this. Speaking about my 88-year-old aunt, love her dearly. She just want to go to church, back home. And then she wants to, and that's all she wants. Church is her social outing. And then when friends and even when family get together, she may come a little bit, but then she just go right back. And so it's not that she doesn't love us, but doesn't enjoy the company. But it's just that form of disengagement. Now, think about your loved ones or people that have you found have you found them to be engaged but really kind of distance, or and I tell you what this also may look like. If you're having a family gathering, you might find this elderly person or this person sit, after they mingle and meet, they may be all right with just going to a chair over in the corner and just watching and not being actively engaged in the discussion. Okay, so read over that. That's kind of interesting. This is sometimes as a coping mechanism, to face as they begin to get older. So I don't know. It's very interesting. And then activity theory. This is high levels of activity involvement are directly related to the high levels of life satisfaction in the elderly person. So depending on how satisfied now, this is something good. If they are at the stage of generativity, how high is that activity level? It's going to be high. It's going to be up there. But if this person is in stagnation, what is their activity level going to be? Will they fall in disengagement or will they fall somewhere else in some of these other theories? Think about that, okay? Then you have continuity theory. Individuals adapt to change by using the same coping styles they have used throughout their life course. And they adopt to new roles that substitute for the roles lost because of age. Now that's some good stuff right there. Now this is gonna make you think. Those coping mechanisms and skills that people learn earlier in the human behavior and development in their life transition and trajectories. When they get older, they may use or resort to those same coping mechanisms, but in a different way. So people have the tendency to cope with things how they always cope with things, and are they substituted? So, that's some good stuff. Okay, um, you want to know that social construction theory, it aims to understand and explain the influence of social definitions, social interactions, and social structures on the individual person. Three things. It aims to look at the social definition, how are people describing it, then what are the social interactions, and then the social structures. So know those and read that, okay? And then the feminist theory suggests that gender is the key factor in understanding a person's aging experience. Now, some may believe that. Some say that, gender and aging is dependent on, that aging is dependent on your gender. Could be, I don't know. But these are some available resources, because when you start to work, regardless of what population of people, you'll have to have some, base knowledge of why this person is acting like this, or why they're like this, and could it be based on their gender? One of the things I think about gender feminist thing, being around my grandparents and things, my grandmother was responsible for the housework inside the house, cooking, all that. Grandfather never probably washed a dish in his life. Matter of fact, he probably would get up from the table and leave his dish there because he did the outside work. Now then, as I watch, my grandparents and then look at my parents, I still see some of those same things, going on. And then when you get to the next baby boomers, like, no, that's not happening like that now. But just think about your family and just look around, your circle of family, and see, do you recognize any of these theories? Where do you find that? And then social exchange theory is built on the notion that exchange of resources take places in all interpersonal interactions. Now, that is, and you'll find that on page 323, and that's bullet 4. Read over that. It aims to understand and explains the influence of, got ahead of myself again. I do that. This social exchange theory is built on the notion that an exchange of resources take place in all interpersonal interactions. Now, I want you to read over that and have a little understanding of each one of them. You just need to know them. I hate to do that to you all, but you need to know them. And then you have age stratification. Society is stratified by age, which determines people's roles and rights. And you see that a lot. People have a certain age, and people define their roles based on their age. Which is not fair, but that's something we have to be aware of, and that's why it's going to take you to go in and maybe advocate for some clients or people that may be working, or help break all these assumptions about the late adulthood. Okay. And then environmental gerontology place environmental impact on social roles, status, and activities for older adults. You'll want to, just kind of read that and have that in your toolbox of understanding. Okay. Now I'm so excited. That video that I keep telling you about the one that I did an interview. I think what I'm going to do, I know I'm going to do, your assignment is going to be to watch that video, and then you'll watch that video, and you'll write a paper, 1 to 2 page paper, on all the things that you recognize that was going on in that interview as it relates to late adulthood. Some of those theories, some of the fears, the age, and then in that same video is going to serve as something that we'll use for our social work practice one class too. So it's a two in one. And I want you again, when you watch that video that I'm gonna upload for this particular class, human behavior two, you will look at the video and then you will assess where that person is who I interviewed, where they are, and do you use some of your assessment skills and seeing some of the things that you identify with. It's going to be really fun and interesting to see your assessment because you have it, because you're going to read the book and then you're listening to this, and then you're going to put all the things that from middle adulthood, adolescent, and just kind of give me some feedback on that. And I think this should be a fun, exciting activity for you to do. Now, let's look at the biological changes in late adulthood. If you would turn with me to page 326, okay? On 326, and look at your PowerPoint, program age theories. Aging follows an internal biological clock that regulates development, growth, and aging. Some say that, regardless of how you take care of yourself, regardless of who you are, there's an internal program aging that is taking place, and that's going to take place in all of us. And you can find a little bit more about that. But aging follows that internal. Now remember, program aging theory says aging follows an internal biological clock that regulates how you're going to be. So somewhat says as you get older, there's just some things that you're not going to be able to do, and there's some things that are going to take place in life. But that's if you believe that particular one. There are all kind of theories out there, but we do know that as individual age, there are some changes that take place in the body that is internal. I mean, due to aging, your biological clock. There are some things like some people, as you get older, you may lose your hearing, but not everybody loses their hearing. And then again, go back to what we were talking about. Are there certain things that happens based on, not because of the internal clock, but based on environmental factors, based on socioeconomic status, based on gender, based on race. And so you have to look at all of those and make that informed decision. Then we have damage or error theories of aging. This emphasizes the role, the environmental assaults that causes cumulative damage to various biological systems and the failure of the body to fix the damage. Okay, that was deep. Look on page 326. I want you to look at there. But before we go back there, let me go one thing. I got ahead of myself. This program age theories, I have it highlighted here, and I think we need to talk about that. There are 3 subcategories in this, and there's a longevity theory, and then the endocrine theory that's based on the like your metabolism and things like that, and then the immunological process of the immune system. So just kind of be familiar with them and know that in the program theory that it's not just one, it's based into 3 subcategories. So you'll want to know that. Now, damage or error theories, and this has a lot to do with their fix the damage. This is based on war and fear, rate of living, cross-linking theory, free radical theory, and then the somatic DNA damage theory. So it kind of says that a lot of things that take place in the biological, mine just went. A lot of things that happen to a person biologically and as they age is not due to anything that they're doing, but it's based on the environmental assaults that happen. And just think about that. Think about elderly people who have limited access to good health, or think about the people in Flint, Michigan, the elderly people who were so greatly impacted by that water. Just think about how some things that happen biological that is will not be able to be fixed by that person, and then nothing they can do. Is just one of those things that are is hard to fix. There are five subcategories of that damage: wear and tear. There, parts of the body wear out from just repeated use. I think that, and that's true. After a while, it just wear out. It wears out. It just wears out. You need to know that those five things. Then rate of living theory. Rates of basal metabolism impacts the lifespan. How you're taking care of yourself. I like to think about this like those who have diabetes or health. That those diseases or things that impact your overall health can maybe your damage or error theories of aging. If you're not taking care of your temple or you got some medical problems going on, then there's a highly likelihood that you may experience some early death because of your metabolism or your health issues. Then cross-linking theory is accumulation of cross-linked proteins and damaged cells and tissues. Now, all that has to do with your medical and how that impacts, and those are things that are sometimes outside the control of the individual. Okay? And read all of those. So just kind of make sure that you read over those and have some good working knowledge and understanding of them. We're going to move on to our next slide. If I can get there. Okay, something. And you have the developmental bioculture, which is found on page 326. And I have down on your PowerPoint what you need to know about that. Brain and culture are in a continuous, interdependent, co-productive transaction, reciprocal determination. It all works together. Okay, just know that there's multi-direction. There's a whole lot of things going on in that process, and pretty much you can find that. But that's what I kind of want you to have a good understanding of that. Okay. Health and longevity. Make sure that you know the mortality rate and morbidity, the incidence of disease, how often these types of diseases are happening. And know that there are certain illnesses that has increased mortality rate, frequency at which death occurs within a population, and it has significantly declined for all segments in the U.S. population. I would say that this was done before this crisis that we're in, but the morbidity is the incidence of disease. How often is it occurring? Look on your PowerPoint here. Morbidity has increased while mortality rates has declined. And there are some certain goals of health promotion for older people. It's preventing the onset of chronic disease and disability, reducing severity of chronic disease. And I'm giving you a little hint. Even in that video, that interview, you'll hear some of this kind of things as we talk about this. Maintaining mental health, and physical function. Those are some things that promote longevity to make sure that people do live a long life so that they can not only have a long chronological life, but they're healthy, that they're productive, and they're able to, not to be a dependent on someone. Age-related changes in the psychological. Look there on your PowerPoint. If you review your PowerPoint and read your chapter, you should be pretty good in understanding here of this. Aging process affects all systems. I'm going to say that. Aging process affects all systems, okay? And that includes even from childhood to middle adulthood to adolescent, all systems. The cardiovascular system, your heart, you may have people who say they have hardened other arteries, or they might have, their heart may not be working as strong. And again, go back. What was happening before they get to this age? Are these illness and things are contributed to where they come from, their journey, their life trajectory, where they were, what were they doing, and um, are their system is like it is now simply because they had some the ACE, adverse childhood experiences, where they're a victim of some experience and that they develop very, very poor coping skills. And as a result of their trauma and the things that they experience, now as an older adult, have they those coping mechanisms and those experiences that they have leading to early death. And we know that research says that that does happen. The respiratory system, their ability and capacity of the lungs. And you remember when this COVID crisis first started, this virus, they were concerned about the elderly people and the respiratory, their ability for them to, their lungs and things to breathe. So you want to make sure breathing becomes a little bit more labored when people get old. And that's why it's so important. I think that's why the CDC is warning elderly people and people who have, respiratory problems, to not to be out and be exposed. Then of course, I want to share something with you. You just hold that thought, and I'm laughing at this. The skeletal system, decrease in bone mass. Hold on. Okay. Although this should have been covered in middle adulthood, I got tickled at myself because, as you can see, a part of that aging, that muscular 50 plus vitamin, I got tickled when I went to when I run out of my vitamins, and there was a lady there, and she was getting some vitamins for 50 plus. I'm like, why do you? I mean, they're the same vitamins. And I asked the pharmacist, and she said, no, there's an increase. They have more things in there for as you get over 50, your bones decrease and all that. So when I looked at that, I thought about that. So, and just imagine in late adulthood, a lot of times their appetite has changed. So they're not getting enough of those things that will supply the nutrients to give their bone density, what they need. Decline in muscular mass, if you notice when people get older, they're thin but get skin, and they don't have the muscle, especially those who are not active and don't exercise. Now remember, don't stereotype and group everybody to fit into this particular category, because we do know some people who are in this age group who are very active, muscular, and dancing and doing everything that they want to do. But we're just saying the majority of that population in that age group, they may fall between that. So, just be mindful that it depends. That's why we look at each individual as a person, individual as a group. Now, if you're doing group, a macro project in a group, then you will look at that as a collective and be mindful of that. But, not everybody will fall into this category, but a majority people in later adulthood will fall in this category. The aging brain. See what I got written down here. I meant to say something. Let me go back for a second about the brain. Now, you remember when, I don't know if you all had a Human Behavior 1 with me, but we were talking about synapses of the brain and how, every time the child is touched and everything, there are those synapses and create these brain patterns, and they're there forever, and they live there a long time. But then as people begin to get old, and in particular in this stage of development, there's a decrease in that synapses of the brain. So those connections are not as healthy. And I'm hoping that vitamins and all of this will help. But we do know that there's a decrease, but not everybody has that same decrease. One of the another things that we talked about here. Okay. Getting ahead of myself. So we're going to look at. We talked about the brain and we talked about the different arteries. Now we're looking at the aging brain and the neurodegenerative diseases. And there are three most common neurodegenerative diseases that are found in late adulthood, and that's dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson. And then we're gonna discuss all three of them, uh, and we'll cover that. Now, what is dementia? I want us to look at dementia at a little closer, and you can find that on page 330 in your book. Now, dementia is a little different. Just I forgot my keys or you misplaced something, but it's dementia is the term that is used for brain disease in which memory and cognitive abilities deteriorate over time. Um, and people, and you not everybody again at that age have that problem, but it's the term where the brain decreases as far as the memory and the cognition. Most common symptoms are difficulties with memory, language, and problem solving. You'll need to know that the most common symptoms are to have a diagnosis of dementia is memory. And now this goes beyond misplacing the keys or I'm thinking about several months ago, I was at Kroger's and there was this little this elderly lady, and I watched her. She was wandering across the parking lot, and I knew, I knew that she was lost. I knew that she had, and so I waited and I said, "Ma'am, could I help you?" And then she said, "I can't find my car." She said, "I don't know where." And she said, "I'm lost." And she said, she said, "I know where I am." She said, "I just don't know. I've been in the store. I just don't remember where I parked." And you know what, y'all, that happens to me too. That's happened to people, who are not. But the fear that I could see in her face. And then when I did show her her car, I asked her, did I need to call anybody? And she had this look, and so there's a memory problem that they have. And then the most common difficulty with that, there's also a language, their ability to speak or their receptive language or their receptive, what they receive, and then their expressive language. It may deteriorate and change as well. Problem solving, their ability to do that. A lot of times, they'll take a puzzle, simple puzzle, or even to write their names or doing things like that to help them to be able to identify. Someone in the world developed dementia. Someone in the world, you'll need to know this. Somewhere, someone is diagnosed every 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3 seconds. That's often. Um, that's serious. So I guarantee you that each one of us probably knows someone who has dementia. Look on page 331 or where dementia has impacted there. Look at that signs of dementia compared to typical age-related changes in memory and cognition. Um, and I want you to look at that and be familiar with that. Signs of dementia and then typical age-related cognition changes. Memory loss that disrupt their daily life versus sometimes forgetting their names. We all probably forget somebody's name or do that, but someone who has true dementia, it totally disrupt that. And review the rest of that, and look on that. Continue to look over all of those. Okay, then we have Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. It's a form of it, and it is one of the costliest conditions to society. And one of the things that I think is so sad about dementia, I mean Alzheimer's, I've watched a lot of people, friends who have caregivers who've lost someone to Alzheimer's, is that they have to lose that loved one twice. That person that they once knew, and then that new person that they're taking care of, then there's a loss for that person. Um, Currently, still today, there's no cure for it. There are a lot of factors that may contribute to that, but they're just not sure. I want you to look in your book on page 333, and there's some different stages of Alzheimer's, and I want you to know those. There's a middle stage, a moderate stage, as well as a severe and late stage. I think one time I heard someone say that, I'm trying to remember that expression. Yeah, let me see, once an adult, twice a child. And they're referencing, I went to a conference and that was said something like that because it says, when you get to that late stage of Alzheimer's disease, sometimes people are back, they're back to the almost to the fetal position, requiring total 24 hours care. And so a lot of times, families struggle and families need resources during that time because I'm telling you, caregivers sometimes even um, struggle and have a hard time with that. I know I try not to make these videos long, but there's no way that I can make them any shorter than class and not to cover. But again, I'm gonna give you. Now, I'm not gonna go over my hour and 15 minutes or an hour, but what we don't cover is gonna be my expectancy that you're gonna read the rest of it and go through it based on your PowerPoints. If you follow the PowerPoints and read, you're gonna be okay. Okay, so now look at Parkinson's disease, and one of the things that Alzheimer's costs a lot because you got to remember, people are not able to work. Caregivers have to take care of their, there's round the clock care, so it costs a lot of money. Okay, Parkinson's disease, that's a chronic progressive movement disorder, and I'm sure you may even know someone who have Parkinson's disease. There are four primary symptoms of Parkinson. I want to cover that, but Parkinson primarily affects older adults over 70. It is the second most common neurodegenerative disease, and it can be difficult to diagnose because now you know why that's difficult to diagnose because there may be because we talked about previously that there are some muscular and skeletal things that happens in the natural process of aging. So then when you have these type of symptoms, you got to make sure that it's not related to that. So there are four primary symptoms of Parkinson. You need to know this. You have tremors, um, rigidity, and trouble with slowness of movement and insecure gait and balance. You'll want to know those and just kind of know those the four: posterior instability and bradykinesia, when trouble with slowness of movement. So you want to make sure that you read that. And then there are also, we know that with Parkinson, that there is some mental deterioration as well after the person get progress through their illness. Okay, now I want to move on. There are some psychological changes. I want you to make sure that you read this on your PowerPoint in the psychological changes in late adulthood. There, start on page 335. It will be my expectation that you will pick up from here because we're over our hour, and I want to make sure that you have that. But look at the psychological changes in late adulthood. Look at your different things here. You have Erickson's struggle of late adulthood is ego integrity versus ego despair, and the integrity is the ability to make peace with one, and then despair is not. They just feeling hopeless and things like that. Read that. I do value your time, but you will have to read the rest of the next starting at page 334 and finish reading your chapter. You will be responsible for reading through page 356. Okay, make sure you read the rest of the chapter. I took you almost there to the end of it. This is a part where you have to do some independent study for reading for yourself. I will upload the question and the video to Blackboard for you to answer. Write a 1 to 2 page. Well, it's going to be more than 1 page. So you're going to write a 2 to 3 page paper, on the video covering late adulthood. identifying some things, and that includes the parts that we didn't finish covering. Okay, you'll have to finish that up. That will be due on Sunday. Well, no, I'm not gonna do it on Sunday. I'm sorry. Sunday is set aside for family. It'll be due on Saturday at midnight. Okay, and that's just what we have to do to make sure that you're getting this information. And I will be uploading this as well as that video. And again, your assignment for this chapter is to finish reading this chapter, then look at the video, and then describe some of the things that in this chapter, in chapter 9, about late adulthood, that you identified, that you assessed, that you could see, and then upload that to Blackboard, and then we'll go from there. And that'll be your assignment. Then we will pick up. Now, we will not meet this week for Zoom at all. So that's neither. If you're in my other class, we're not meeting for Zoom this week, but we'll pick up next week. I hope that you have enjoyed this. We're learning together. And at any point in time you have any questions or I need to clarify something for you, just give me a call. Okay? We're in this together. You got this. Know that you got that. My last word to you, homework. You will watch the video, then you will write a 2 to 3 page paper on your observation, your assessment of some things that you identify that is in here in your late adulthood. And I think that will be good. Okay? Thank you, and you have a wonderful evening.